The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dusty street of the small town. As the saloon doors creaked open, a figure stepped inside, drawing the attention of every patron. The drifter was tall and lean, his rugged features framed by unkempt hair and a 5 o'clock shadow that hinted at days spent wandering. His clothes were tattered and worn, a patchwork of dirt and wear that told stories of travel through rough terrain. There was something unsettling about him, an aura of danger wrapped around him like a fog. He walked slowly to the poker table, his boots scraping against the wooden floor with each deliberate step. The murmurs in the room hushed as he took a seat across from 3 local men whose eyes narrowed at this unexpected visitor. They were seasoned players, accustomed to each other's tricks and bluffs. Now they exchanged wary glances, unsure of what to make of this newcomer. As the drifter settled into his chair, he placed a worn deck of cards on the table with a soft thud. The sound echoed through the saloon like a gunshot. He looked up, his piercing gaze sweeping over each man before settling into his own steely resolve. The faint smell of whiskey mixed with sweat and uncertainty hung in the air as he shuffled those cards with practiced ease. The room buzzed with anticipation, all eyes fixed on the drifter. He was an enigma, a man whose past lay hidden beneath layers of mystery. Yet as he smiled faintly, revealing just a hint of mischief, it was clear that danger lurked beneath his calm exterior. The tension in the saloon thickened as the poker game began. The 3 local men, Hank, Bill, and Jake, each had their reasons for sitting at the table that evening. Hank was a grizzled veteran of many poker nights. His weathered face betrayed years of hard living and loss. He approached every hand with a simmering intensity, seeking not just to win but to prove himself in front of his peers. Bill, on the other hand, was the town's storyteller, always eager to share tales of glory and adventure from days long past. He loved the thrill of poker, not just for the money but for the chance to weave his stories into reality with each card drawn. However, beneath his boisterous exterior lay insecurity, always worried about losing more than just his money. Jake was the youngest player at the table, a hotshot determined to make a name for himself. With a bold smile and quick fingers, he often bluffed his way through games with reckless abandon. Eager to impress everyone around him, he couldn't resist taking risks that sometimes left him with nothing. As the drifter shuffled the deck before them, all eyes were glued to his every move. The air crackled with anticipation as each man placed his bets cautiously. Each round brought new cards and new tension, as Hank's stare bore into the drifter's calm demeanor, while Bill tried to lighten the mood with an attempt at humor that fizzled under their shared unease. Meanwhile, Jake's eagerness led him to raise stakes far too quickly. The game unfolded like a dance of shadows and light as they played not only for money but also for pride. A dangerous mix that set the stage for what was yet to come. As the game progressed, the stakes climbed higher, and the atmosphere in the saloon became electric with competition. Hank's brow furrowed with determination as he pushed his chips forward, feeling the weight of his past losses and the need to regain his reputation. His gaze shifted from the cards to the drifter, searching for any sign of weakness or bluff. The air thickened, filled with a tangible tension that made every hand feel like a life-or-death situation. Bill, usually the light-hearted one, felt his own stress begin to bubble beneath his jovial surface. He attempted another joke, but his voice cracked slightly, revealing just how nervous he had become. The thrill of storytelling was transformed into a fear of humiliation. He couldn't bear the thought of losing everything, his money and his status in the small town. With each card that turned over on the table, Bill grew quieter, clutching his drink tightly as if it were a lifeline. Meanwhile, Jake's bravado escalated with each winning hand. Eager to impress, he boldly raised bets, pushing chips forward with exaggerated flair. The youthful fire inside him made him reckless. He thrived on the thrill of risk but didn't notice how it riled up his opponents. Hank sneered at Jake's bravado, irritation flaring as he felt challenged by this younger player who seemed to be taking unnecessary chances. The game morphed from strategic play into a battle of wills, a test of pride as glaring eyes locked onto each player's next move. The chattering patrons faded into the background, Now it was just the four men at that table, fiercely competitive and dangerously close to boiling over. Each card drawn only intensified the silent conflict, foreshadowing what might come next in this high-stakes showdown. The tension in the saloon reached a boiling point as the players faced off over their cards. Just as Jake pushed forward another hefty stack of chips, an uneasy silence fell over the table. Hank leaned back, eyeing the drifter with suspicion, his hands tightening around his cards. "You're playing awfully well for a drifter," he spat out, his voice low and accusing. The drifter looked up slowly, an inscrutable expression on his face. "Just luck, my friend," he replied nonchalantly, shuffling the deck again with practiced fingers. But Hank wasn't convinced. His competitive spirit flared in response to this newcomer, who seemed to dance through the game effortlessly. "Luck?" Hank scoffed. "Or are you stacking the deck somehow?" The accusation hung heavy in the air, and Bill shifted uncomfortably in his seat, sensing the impending clash. Jake, feeling emboldened by Hank's words, chimed in with a sneer. "Yeah, you got some tricks up your sleeve? 'Cause we don't take kindly to cheaters around here." The room grew still as all eyes turned towards the drifter, whose calm demeanor only seemed to heighten their accusations. "Cheating? That's rich coming from you," the drifter shot back, his voice steady but laced with an edge that sent a shiver through the crowd. "You're just scared I might take your money." Hank stood up abruptly, slamming his palms against the table. "I'll put my money on honesty any day," he shouted, challenging both the drifter and himself in that moment. The saloon erupted into chaos as heated words flew back and forth like bullets fired in anger. Patrons leaned closer, eager for drama as this rivalry threatened to explode into something far more dangerous than poker. The atmosphere in the saloon shifted dramatically as Hank's accusation hung in the air, thick with anger and adrenaline. The drifter remained seated, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the tension swirling around him. But as Hank's face flushed with rage, it became clear that words alone might not suffice to settle this dispute. "Step outside if you're so sure of your luck," Hank growled, pushing his chair back with a screech that echoed through the room. The patrons fell silent, hearts pounding at the brewing storm, while Jake's eyes lit up with excitement at the thought of confrontation. With a nod, the drifter rose slowly, unbothered by Hank's challenge. "Lead the way," he replied with a hint of a smile, an unsettling calmness about him that only fueled Hank's fury. They stepped outside, followed closely by Jake and the curious onlookers who filtered out of the saloon like moths to a flame. Once outside, the cool evening air felt charged as Hank squared off against the drifter in the dim light. Jake stood nearby, ready to jump in if things escalated. "You think you can come here and take us for fools?" Hank shouted, fists clenched at his sides. Without warning, Hank lunged forward, throwing a punch aimed squarely at the drifter's jaw. But the drifter sidestepped effortlessly, twisting away from the blow. In an instant, he retaliated, landing a sharp jab that sent Hank reeling. The fight erupted into chaos. Blows were exchanged, and within moments, Jake joined the fray, swinging wildly at the drifter. As shouts rang out in the night, voices only grew louder. The confrontation spiraled out of control as chairs were overturned and onlookers gasped in shock. In that moment of chaos, something dark bubbled beneath the surface. This was no longer just a fight. It was turning into something more lethal. The brawl erupted with furious energy, fists flying and shouts echoing through the night. The drifter moved with surprising agility, dodging Hank's wild swings while delivering precise strikes that found their marks. It was chaos, a whirlwind of anger and adrenaline that engulfed the three men in a deadly dance. In the heat of the moment, Jake, eager to prove himself, lunged forward to aid Hank. But in his reckless enthusiasm, he miscalculated his aim and collided with Hank instead. The two stumbled back, creating an opening for the drifter, who seized the moment. With swift precision, he unleashed a final blow to Hank's jaw that sent him crashing to the ground. Jake, now off balance and facing the drifter alone, hesitated just long enough for the drifter to advance. A quick jab caught him in the ribs, causing him to gasp for breath as he crumpled to the dirt beside Hank. In mere moments, both local men lay incapacitated on the ground, their pride replaced by pain and humiliation. As Bill watched from a distance, his heart racing in fear for his friends, he realized that this was no longer just a fight. It had turned deadly. He rushed into the fray, attempting to pull Hank and Jake away from further harm. But in his frantic attempt to intervene, he accidentally pushed his weight against the drifter. The drifter's patience snapped. His response was swift and brutal, a single punch that sent Bill sprawling backward to the ground. The scene turned eerily quiet as Bill lay motionless beside his friends, leaving only the sound of heavy breathing in the aftermath. Within moments, 3 lives hung in the balance, their fates sealed by a night of reckless pride and violence. The saloon stood silent as patrons recoiled from the brutality they had witnessed, knowing that this clash would forever alter their town and leave an empty space where laughter once thrived. The saloon, once buzzing with laughter and camaraderie, now lay shrouded in an eerie silence. Patrons, who moments before leaned eagerly over their drinks, sat frozen in shock, their eyes wide as they took stock of the devastating scene before them. The sounds of clinking glasses and friendly banter had been replaced by the heavy stillness that only tragedy can bring. Hank, Jake, and Bill lay sprawled on the ground, their forms motionless beneath the fading light. The atmosphere thickened as a palpable sense of loss settled over the room, each breath feeling like a weight that pressed on the hearts of the onlookers. The drifter, having fled into the shadows, left behind a haunting memory that ricocheted off the walls. In the dim light of the saloon, overturned chairs remained as a grim reminder of the chaotic fight. Dust particles floated lazily through the air, illuminated by the dim glow of hanging lanterns. The wooden floor, stained with spilled whiskey and a few drops of blood, whispered stories of games played in joy now overshadowed by horrors of violence. One elderly gambler sat in disbelief, his hands shaking as he reached for his untouched drink, while a group of men huddled together, murmuring about what had just transpired. Their faces were pale and drawn, reflecting a shared grief for lives lost too soon, their future stripped away in a mere heartbeat. As minutes passed in heavy silence, an absolute contrast to the earlier liveliness, the saloon transformed from a vibrant gathering place into a hollow shell of regret. The laughter and camaraderie were gone, leaving only the lingering ghost of what once was, both in the hearts of the townsfolk and the empty chairs waiting for their return. Amid the oppressive silence that had enveloped the saloon, the drifter stood at the entrance, framed by the dim light filtering through the open door. His face remained expressionless, lips pressed into a thin line that hinted at neither remorse nor satisfaction for what had just transpired. With a slow, deliberate motion, he turned and walked away from the scene of chaos, leaving behind a haunting memory that would linger in the minds of those left behind. As he stepped out into the cool night air, the sounds of his boots crunching on gravel resounded in stark contrast to the stillness of the saloon. The stars twinkled above him, indifferent to the devastation he had caused. He didn't look back. His silhouette was swallowed by the shadows and the darkness of the night. Inside, patrons remained frozen, eyes glued to the doorway through which he had exited. Hearts raced and whispered conversations erupted among them. Disbelief mingled with fear as they realized that an ordinary game of poker had spiraled into an unimaginable tragedy. In that moment, it felt as if time itself stood still. The drifter's presence had loomed large in their lives for just a fleeting moment, yet he had forever altered their reality. He became a specter, a tale that would be recounted in hushed tones and darkened corners about the man who arrived like a ghost and departed leaving lives shattered in his wake. The saloon stood empty, replaced by an echoing void where laughter had once thrived. The weight of loss settled heavily upon their shoulders as they mourned not only for those who lay motionless within but also for the carefree nights that were now lost to shadows, memories stained by a single man's dangerous gamble. The sun rose the next morning over the small town, illuminating the saloon's silent exterior and casting long shadows where laughter once echoed. What had begun as an ordinary night, a simple poker game, had spiraled into a tragedy that would resonate in the hearts of its residents for years to come. The weight of violence swept through the community like a dark shadow, altering their view of what once felt safe and familiar. In the days that followed, whispers filled the streets as townsfolk grappled with the uncomfortable reality of their quiet lives being torn apart by a single man's actions. The story of Hank, Bill, and Jake spread through every home, how their pride and aspirations met with an abrupt and violent end at the hands of a drifter, whose indifference seemed to mock their loss. Patrons who had shared drinks began to avoid the saloon, its doors swinging open on squeaky hinges only to remind them of the darkness that lurked within. Children who used to play in the streets sensed a change too. Laughter was replaced by hushed conversations between worried parents. The thrill of competing for greatness turned into a cautionary tale about reckless bravado leading to unimaginable pain. As weeks went by, reminders of that fatal night still clung to the air like smoke, a lingering caution against conflict and competition that could so easily tip from spirited banter into deadly consequence. The town learned what it meant to carry heavy hearts. They had witnessed how quickly life could be extinguished by simple choices made in heated moments. This tragedy transformed their view on camaraderie and rivalry. It required reflection on their own actions and motivations, lest they fall prey to another drifter who might wander into their lives seeking nothing but chaos. In this way, they emerged from sorrow, determined to find connection anew in honor of those they lost. A quiet resilience woven into the fabric of their community, forged by lessons learned through pain.